Namaste, Jai Hind. This is Preity Upala, and you are watching the Preity Experience. We are very excited to bring to you a brand new segment called Declassified with Preity. And for our inaugural episode, we have a very special guest indeed. My guest needs no introduction in the area of geopolitics and foreign policy and defense strategies, but I will take the liberty of giving you a brief bio and then we'll invite him on board. It is with great pleasure that we bring to you a conversation with the one and only Mr. Bharat Karnad. Mr. Bharat Karnad is a distinguished fellow at the United Service Institution of India and an emeritus professor for the National Security Studies Center for Policy Research in New Delhi. He was a member of the very first NSA, the National Security Advisory Board, member of the Nuclear Doctrine Drafting Group, and the National Security Council. He conceived and conducted the first ever high-level interagency war game on the nuclear tripwire in the subcontinent. He is a very well-known TV commentator and writes for various publications and periodicals around the world, including one called Realpolitik for BloombergQuint.com. So again, with great pleasure, I bring to you Mr. Bharat Karnad. Let's invite him on.
Thank you very much, Preity. Glad to be on your forum.
Thank you, Mr. Karnadji. It is such a pleasure. We meet at very volatile times indeed. There is a lot of action in our neck of the neighborhood, as always. So much has gone down in the subcontinent and Central Asia. And I'm so curious to know your assessment of the situation. I want to start actually by quoting your recent article where you said, by the end of 2021, Hollywood producers will be making movies on how the US dramatically won in Afghanistan, and they will be made heroes of, and so on and so forth. So I guess my question to you is, how did we get here, and where did we all go so wrong?
Well, basically, I think you are misquoting me in a sense, because I was quoting someone called Joydeep Sarkar, who's a correspondent on my blog, and we correspond a lot, and is a mountaineer, a reputed mountaineer, and has keen interest in geopolitics. Basically, I think he was being satirical in pointing out that the United States, and Hollywood in particular, is a medium that whitewashes American defeats in war, by having John Wayne coming in as Green Beret in Vietnam, for instance, and in a sense legitimizing that particular experience for the American masses. Now, something like this is going to happen, is what Mr. Sarkar is confidently predicting. And I don't doubt that something of this kind will happen. Because I think defeat is hard to take, especially for a superpower that boasts of the biggest and the finest military in the world, and supposedly has never lost a war. But remarkably, in real terms, has been at the losing end successively. Whether it is Korea, where it was held to an impasse by the People's Liberation Army of China, in Vietnam by the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong guerrilla forces in South Vietnam, then in Iraq, where the entire thing blew up in its face, essentially. And that was a misadventure that they simply got out of by cutting and running, which is exactly what they repeated in Afghanistan, being unable to beat the Taliban, who are very fierce fighters. People who know history, they know that Afghanistan is one country that no Western country, no Western power has been able to tame. And that is something they ought to have been aware of before getting into this kind of slipping into a quagmire, as it were. For 20 years, they fought. And as someone has said about the American way of war in Afghanistan, they fought the same war 20 times because it's the same strategy, the same thing. They're banging their heads against a stone wall because the Afghans are very mobile. They hot-foot hot-foot themselves out of danger, and then collapse on American concentrations of troops or whatever. And of course, American military and the soldiers cannot do without their very, very rich and wealthy backup systems, the PX canteens and their beefsteaks that they have to have. I mean, that's not how you conduct war. I thought Viet Cong taught the Americans that, but it's a hard-learned lesson they haven't learned yet. The Afghans similarly, can survive on nothing, next to nothing. So when you go into a milieu where you have such fighters who are very hardy, who can survive on nothing, and will simply not give up, then you have a recipe for both what Biden calls never-ending war or something like that, and a surefire outcome, which is American, in a sense, declaring victory and getting the hell out. They did that in Vietnam. They couldn't do it here, nor were they do it in Iraq, where they went and destabilized the entire region. Very heedless of the consequences for the world and for themselves in a way. So this is the pattern I find the Americans time and again repeating. And it is unfortunate because all they end up doing is expending their wealth, $2 trillion. I imagine Americans would have had better uses for $2 trillion than getting into a war that now many claim they didn't want, but they did get into it, and they have massively failed. They were defeated, as they were in Saigon, as they were out of Syria, as they were out of Iraq, as they were out of, now Afghanistan. So one hopes there is some end to learning the lessons, the right lessons, and the American government will learn it. So when that will happen, we don't know. As I put in a tagline to Joydeep Sarkar's very satirical take, I said, the last line I said that Sarkar should have added was, 20 years hence, when this experience has faded, a new generation comes on in Washington, they'll then scout around for new locales to change regimes and to build nations. So this is the kind of stuff that is going to happen, and that's going to ill serve U.S. strategic and national interests.
All right. Thank you for that response. Now, I've been reading a little bit about your recent articles on this particular issue, and you do seem to have an unconventional strategy for India, which is to recognize the Taliban government yesterday and get on with it. Do you still stand by this
Absolutely.
perspective?
I stand by all my conclusions I come to. They are for a reason. They are not just opinions. These are based on a realistic assessment of the reality and what the country's options are. In fact, on Friday, the Times of India is going to publish something called a face-off, a column, where I'll be, I'm going up against someone, I don't know who. I'll be again arguing for the immediate recognition of the Taliban Emirate and whoever else, and I'm sure an establishment type, will, argue the contrary position. Um, yeah, I mean, the reasons are really quite obvious. We are on the back, in sort of on the back foot right now in Afghanistan. Ashraf Ghani and his regime was very friendly to India, and we had lots of investment, political and economic investments over the years in Afghanistan during both Hamid Karzai's tenure and his successor Ashraf Ghani's government. So we had a lot going for us. And then all of a sudden, the Taliban have come in. It's not that we haven't had contact with the Taliban, leadership. We have, both in Doha and elsewhere, through our intelligence agencies to, offline discussions and so on. And we have, I've said in my posts and so on, that we have connections, and because Taliban is a quilt work of factions, tribal factions. So we are close to some of these factions, and we use it for our purposes, covert, overt, and that's there. And we'll now use them if should the government of India continue in following the American lead and having pulled out, now being bereft of options. That's the real problem that I'll be discussing in my piece on Friday in the Times of India. Now, the thing is, the other stakeholders, the other players in the game are Pakistan, China, Russia, and America.
Yeah.
America would still like to wield influence through what I call the Panjshiri coalition that's now firming up, the opposition under Amrullah Saleh, and a chap called what's his name?
The Northern Alliance.
Security advisor, Hamidullah Naqib. And, whole units of the Afghan army who have intact retreated into the Panjshir Valley, there to join up with the Tajik forces loyal to the great line of Panjshir, the late great line of Panjshir, Ahmad Massoud, Ahmed Shah Massoud, whose son Ahmed Massoud wrote that piece in the Washington Post the other day saying that, well, we are here and we are going to now fight the Taliban. So this is now the lay of the land, wherein China believes that it can simply buy the Taliban out and get them to comply with their goals, whatever their strategic objectives are, which in this case is to have Afghanistan safe for all kinds of infrastructure projects to link up with the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and more importantly, to mine the kind of mineral wealth that Afghanistan has, lithium in particular, gold, copper, and they have really what no one really has so far talked about, gas and oil reserves. So they desperately want to get that and to not let the American companies or Western companies or even the Indian companies into mining concessions and so on. So that's their strategy. The Russians are frightened that the Taliban influence will spread through the adjoining Central Asian states to their Muslim enclaves that form their southern tier, from Tataristan to Bakaristan, in the east. So these are various, I might be mispronouncing that, and I think I have mispronounced it. Just look up the map. So these are enclaves that have almost as much as 50 to 70% Muslims, which
That's
people
right.
don't know. And they have had problems in Chechnya. As you know, there was a civil war there that was very violently pacified by the Russian special forces and the army. So they're very afraid of that and paranoid of that particular Islamic influence getting in, so on. So they will do everything covertly now to also help the Panjshiri coalition. So even though the formerly Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, saying, well, the Taliban are doing great, they are being very moderate and good and reasonable. The fact of the matter is they are now getting the Central Asian states
Yes.
adjoining Amu Darya border to come in and help the Panjshiri coalition. And Tajikistan's already stepped in, by the way. So this is the first. So you're going to find the Panjshir, what I call the Panjshir resistance,
Hmm.
now firming up to a point where it becomes more powerful than the old Northern Alliance.
Yes.
Now, Colonel Abdul Dostum and his Uzbek element, there are 20,000 armed Uzbeks under his command. Now they are going to join the field, going join the Panjshir
Hmm.
coalition. And I think the Taliban, it's not going to be like what they've had, an easy
Yes.
kind of a game against the Afghan National Army. This is going to be, again, a very hard fought situation. The Russians were never able to, impose their will on the Panjshir fighters under Ahmad Shah Massoud during the occupation in the
Hmm.
1980s. The first Taliban government under Mullah Omar was not able to quell that rebellion in Panjshir. So Panjshir is really symbolically and substantively an extraordinary resistance
Hmm.
center to and really shrugs off any idea of control by Kabul. Whoever controls Kabul, they cannot control Panjshir.
Hmm.
And Panjshir is therefore then a territory which is hard to access, very difficult to get in, and any invading force like the Talibanis, 400 Taliban were killed yesterday, since yesterday evening, by the way. The deadline was given the
Yes.
Panjshiri coalition to, just join the mainstream, just give up and come and talk and negotiate. And Panjshir said, nothing doing, you'll have to fight us. And the Taliban columns started coming into Panjshir Valley, and they were decimated.
Hmm.
400 were killed
Yes.
by in last report. So, so this is not an easy thing. That's going to there are no easy solutions now, and Afghanistan is again back from simmer into a boiled situation once the war suddenly takes off. So that's going to happen, and then let's see. And I don't think the Taliban are going to have it easy, even though they
Hmm.
have learned from their past experience in Kabul. They are being reasonable. They are not being as silly in requiring the women to observe parda, though they say that they'll have to do. And wherever they have so far made their presence felt, they've
Hmm.
insisted that that men not shave and women go into parda and all the nonsense that they've had. They had
Yes.
when Mullah Omar, the one-eyed Mullah
Hmm.
Omar, ruled Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001.
Hmm.
So we're in that kind of situation again, the situation of war and very active war. So whatever may happen or may not happen in Kabul, this thing is going to spread, and so we are in for in it for the long haul.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. India should recognize this Taliban government. However, do you also think that India should provide assistance to, or in some way also be open to the resistance? Because there are some voices that are saying they should fully support Amrullah Saleh and in his efforts.
Well, how do you know we are not supporting it? I mean, the point to make is really all countries have all the irons in the fire.
Hmm. True.
That's why I said there are overt things that countries do, covert things that countries do. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, we have been supporting them from the very beginning. And Northern Alliance, we were the main supporters, other than Russia at one time. So I assume it's the same Northern Alliance in other guise. So I assume the Indian pipeline of supply and so on, material supply and financial help, etc.,
Hmm.
is ongoing. And America now will step in as well because America's ego has been hurt because they've been kicked out
Yes.
brutally, and they're going to say, okay, we'll do the next best thing. We'll try and finance and fund these guys and send them arms and get the CIA special forces agents to paradrop into Panjshir and then help them set up all kinds of things. So again, as I said, this is now a cascading kind
Yes.
of war, and military operations and hostilities will their uh, intensity will be heightened in months to in weeks and months to come.
Yeah, and the funniest thing about well, maybe not so funny, is America's retreated, but yes, like you mentioned, the ego's hurt and they don't want to miss out on the action. So
Yeah,
wherever they can put their hand up and or in the simmering pot, they're gonna do it. And then at some point they'll even claim that it was their efforts that got the winner over the line.
yeah, but that's what Joydeep Sarkar said. That's the whole element of the Hollywood films that are going to come by 2030, where you'll have
I'm
some young guy, you know,
I might be in one of those movies.
yeah, yeah. And on Apache helicopters, Black
Yes.
Hawks, or Apache 864s that are coming in with all guns blazing and decimating the Taliban and planting the American stars and stripes and all that nonsense.
I I
So
ca- I
this is going to be
I
fun.
I can't hardly wait.
Yeah.
Now, with everything that has gone down in the neighborhood of late, um, you still go hold your original position that China is much more of a threat to India than Pakistan.
Pakistan is not a threat at all. How is Pakistan a threat? I mean, that's what I tell our military, even the military audiences. I tell the Pakistani military audiences when I go on across to the other side that you are nothing. That hurts their amor
Mm.
proprio. And I tell them, you're no, what will you do if we remove all our troops from the western border? What will you do? I mean, what will you do? Nothing. And they all sit there looking at me. They say, yeah, we can't do anything. What will they do? I say that to the Indian military, you're being so goddamn silly. We have been for the last since 71, you reduced
Yes,
Pakistan to the Western wing, and then you began fixating on Pakistan, which doesn't make sense at all. While
yes,
China is going scot free, and they are the real danger and threat to India. And so obvious a thing has not been recognized by either by the government or the military. Now, I think after last year's, sort of incidents in the Depsang Valley and in eastern Ladakh, now they've begun to realize that what I've been saying for 30 years, they're getting on track. So the point to make is, as they say in Urdu or Hindi, ये सरकार देर से आई पर दुरुस्त आई, meaning
yes.
ultimately they get it right, they got it right. While what I've been saying for 30 years is on a realistic assessment. I have no emotional thing. Pakistan is great. You go to Pakistan, I feel like a
Wow.
Pakistan. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. I mean, and what's the cultural difference? Their culture is Indian culture, right? They tune into
Yeah.
the same Bollywood songs and music. Though I think their music is far better than.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think so
yes,
because
true.
their culture is more classical and more rooted in the subcontinental reality,
Art.
while our music and thing is getting westernized and we're jumping up and down and
Pop. Yeah.
yeah, pop. Well, that's fine. I have nothing against this. It's fun, but if you just plug into or bring up on the internet
Yes,
the
yes,
Coke Studio,
Qawwalis and all
no,
that.
no, the Coke
Yeah.
Studio, just
Coke
and look
Studio,
at
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Pakistan, Coke Studio Pakistan, then compare it to Coke Studio India. I
Yes.
mean, it's not a comparison. I mean, it's. I mean, I'm almost embarrassed when I see Coke Studio India. When I compare it to the quality and
Yes,
and and the depth of
sure.
not just the talent but the musical classical roots of the Pakistani thing, which is entirely Indian gharana. Bikaner Gharana, Gwalior Gharana. I mean, what they're not in Pakistan, for God's sake, but they are the best practitioners along with the Urdu language. There's nothing Pakistani about Urdu. Urdu is an entirely Uttar Pradeshi
Yes,
invention.
Northern Indian
Amazing.
language. Yeah.
No, Uttar Pradesh in particular. I mean, from Lucknow is the
UP. Yeah.
the UP is the center of it. So went to Pakistan, where there the Punjabis are jumping up and down saying, why the heck were we forced to give up our mother tongue, which is Punjabi? And the
Yeah.
Baloch, we gave up whatever they speak, and Pashtos, they
Yes.
speak Pashto and they speak Dari, the language there. They said, why were we required to speak Urdu? It's nothing to do with us. So you see how it's coming back and biting their backsides for the Pakistanis to impose any language, which is a good thing our government never got into by
That's
imposing
right.
any language, though there was a Hindi thing and it's still there, but you said whatever your language, you go and do it. That's fine. So
Very interesting.
yeah,
I like the way that you think about all of these matters. It's very refreshing and I think quite contrasting to a lot of the noises that you see on TV, TV debates and in op-eds,
they're not
because
debating,
people
they're
get
shouting
so
matches. I mean, they're just shouting matches. Most of them are ignoramuses. They're ignorant of basic reality. They don't know anything. It's just a mess. But just it's entertainment. It's more
yes,
entertainment than news, and they generate more heat than light. So that's fine. I mean, that's what the audience demands. I think that's
hmm,
fine. That's what they get. What you want, you get. What you pay
fair
for,
enough.
you. Yeah.
That's true. Now, look, what I see with what's happening in Afghanistan, in some way, it is a policy failure in Washington. Four consecutive US governments have, as far as Pakistan is concerned, they have got it wrong. And I think in some way they've been had and they don't realize it. So what is your take on that? And why is it's four different governments, and still 20 years later we're still in the same boat?
Well, I think this has something to do with American hubris. Hubris is false pride. The
Yes.
Greek gods in the Greek pantheon. You go back and they say they always warn you against hubris because that's the downfall of nations, of peoples, and so on. False pride that you can do nothing wrong, that you know it all, we have it all, we are doing good for the world. All those kinds of very preachy attitudes. Um, that really, is they're quite fraudulent and
Hmm.
transparently so. Because what the Americans perhaps want are access to markets or something like that, or Hollywood wanting the local theaters everywhere showing their pictures.
Hmm.
So that is then sort of enveloped by these high sounding ideals. You're promoting democracy, you're doing this, you're doing that. And you know the point about, well, democracy is fine, I love it, and I'm glad India is a free country and all that, but then to try and impose it on countries that have never known democracy, but that's a good thing or bad thing, it's a value judgment and I'm not going to make it. That is their outlook. And I always said, when Indian governments have adopted the idea that, whenever there are martial law administrators in Pakistan, military rulers, I said, we are not the takedars of democracy. I mean,
Hmm.
and how flawed is Indian democracy, for God's sake, for us to set ourselves up as some kind of exemplars? We are not. And for people to be disabused of notions of goodness and greatness is a
Hmm.
beginning of wisdom, really, because you then begin to see what you really are, rather than how you'd like others to see you as. That's the real problem, the disjunction between what you are and what you'd like to be seen as, in the case of the United States. And that's true also in personal cases too, isn't it? We'd all like to be perceived in a certain way, which may be very different from what we really
Yeah.
are. But then there's a public persona, there's a private persona, and so on. So these are things that you then project onto the nation state, and you have this kind of a mess. The Americans are unable to decide. They still think they are the what's that? The city on the hill. President Reagan's, the was it a slogan or was it a
Hmm.
symbolic representation of what India or what he thought the United States was, the city of hope. Okay, but then yeah. So this is where the problem is. I mean, and but this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Most countries have suffered from hubris, and they have fallen by the wayside. Most great empires have done so. They have fallen by the wayside because they're overtaken by their own pride, and
Yes.
they ended up having feet of clay, and they were so shown up. Once you are shown up, then you kind of slink back into your hole. You say, "Oh, all right." So this is the real problem. That's true for all countries. India is the worst in that respect, in being a poseur, as the French would say. Just trying to build yourself as something that you're not. You know. So yeah, you sort of I battle the same things here that I'm criticizing Americans for and America
Hmm.
for. Say turn it around and say India is guilty of precisely the same things.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's
Oh,
not a it's not a it's not a view that doesn't take India's situation. I'm merely
yes.
saying that this is true of all countries, including India.
Yeah. They're both, well, US and India are both consumed by their own illusions of grandeur or delusions of grandeur, I should say. Um, do you see a shift in US foreign policy vis-a-vis both India as well as Pakistan for the next few years?
Now, look, India would like nothing better than for India to be its plaything. Honestly,
Yeah,
they'd like to
interesting.
manipulate. I mean, why not? We'd like to manipulate America, and we'd like to
Yeah.
play around with America. Or we'd like to play around with Bhutan or something like that. So but the point I think is, we are simply not. We are too big, too
Hmm.
diverse, and simply too uncontrollable for America or
Yeah.
anybody else to handle us. The British had a handle on us because they were really smart.
Yeah.
They're frightfully smart strategists, very strategic minded always. And I always say I admire the British because they knew how to use diversity
Yes.
to to promote
Divide.
their goals and objectives. And of course, divide impera, divide and rule. Perfect. They did it beautifully and did it for good 200 years,
200 years. Yeah.
250 years. Yeah, yeah. And we just fell for it time and again. And this is partly what I'm going to address in my first chapter, incidentally, in my new book that's coming out next year.
Ooh.
Still writing the
I'm,
damn thing.
I can't wait. Um,
You
in
should be
in the
reading my other books, which are huge
Yes,
tome.
yes, I can't. I should. I will. I shall do that. That's first thing tomorrow. Uh, in the past, I think you've said it in no uncertain terms that America is no great friend of India. In some ways, it's an unreliable partner. Um, is this still the case?
Oh, absolutely. My entire book, something in 2015, was called "Why India is Not a Great Power,"
Yes.
and then
Yet.
in brackets, "Yet." The "yet" was not my doing. It was suggested to me by my American editor. She said, "Bharat, just put the "yet" there. It'll garner you more sales." It did. Uh, I was more declaratory. India is not going to be a great power. She said, "Yet." Okay, fine. Because that's true. There's always a chance India will recover from its complete mess they made of a lot of things and get on the
Yeah.
great power trail. I mean, there's always that prospect. Um, but yeah, the Americans are so unreliable, so
Mm,
untrustworthy, uh, and so completely, self-centered. You know, s- any nation that's very self-centered cannot make a good strategic partner of any other country.
true.
And I said that's again quite normal for great powers to do that. Because and I've said there's nothing for us to be feeling bad about if the Americans have time and again kicked you in the shins and gone on as if
Yeah.
and then bedded down with your enemy or something like that. The Because that serves their interest. That's perfectly fine. That's how great powers conduct their business. which is what I argued in that book, which what I said we should be, realpolitik. That's what India should be. There should be no emotion. You should, it's just self-interest. What is your
Hmm.
national interest? You'll do anything. There's no morality in international relations. That's what I've been saying. There's no morality at all, except in rhetoric. Yeah, talk about India, democracy, America, great, freedom, and so on. In real terms, as far as interstate affairs go, they mean nothing. Except, as I said, in rhetoric, which is fine. We can, brandish our rhetoric all we want. And that's a good thing to do for public consumption. But the hard fact of life is that you really further your interests all the time, or you should, and not do something because someone else expects you to do it, but do it because it serves your interests. And that's the sort of attitude I've been trying for 30 years, 30, 40 years, now 30 years, to get into. But that's not our mindset. We are not
Hmm.
hardwired that way as I see it. And I'm told always that you are too Western, you are too American. It's true. I mean, my, where are you in Los Angeles?
I'm in LA, yes.
UCLA, and I didn't finish my PhD. I got through my qualifiers, and then I was going to write my PhD for perhaps one of the greatest strategic pioneers in America, Bernard Brodie,
Wow.
who literally wrote the nuclear strategy for the United States Air Force at RAND and so on. So I was doing and then I fell out with him. And I said, well, screw it. And I threw it all up and came back. It's a good thing I did, I think. Otherwise, you would have been, absorbed in the RAND
Yes,
thing, and you remained there.
academia and
No,
yes,
and then you would remain there and
yes,
made whatever of yourself. But as I always said, I've explained to people, and they asked me, why did you come back? And I said, look, very simply, and I assess myself just as sparely, as it were, as I do everything else, I think, and objectively. And I think I said, I'll be a bigger fish in a smaller pond in
yes.
India.
I
While
I
in
think
America, the
India
other,
needs you right now, so we are very lucky that you're here. They may or may not know that they need you, but trust me, they need you.
I don't know about that, but the kind of it to say that anyway. Yeah.
And so going moving on to the quad, you've had mixed opinions on it. Mod quad, is that still the way to go? And we need
Yeah,
to, I guess, get on with it because,
yeah,
like you mentioned, we've signed all these Becca, Lamu, all these agreements. What are we getting out of it? It's a one-sided affair.
yeah. So that's the case I've been making since the nuclear deal was first signed, which was the open sesame, actually, for the Americans to get in a formal sort of way into making an ally out of America. And I always oppose that because a very large country like India cannot be anybody's, trick pony, you see.
Yeah,
And the thing is that because we are large and we have our own ambitions and our own interests that will drive us to be a great power. The point is then to tag along and climb onto an American bandwagon, or as we earlier did, the Russian bandwagon, the Soviet bandwagon, in the 60s onwards till about the end of the Cold War. In some sense, detracts from India's ambition and drive, etc. So that's problematic. The modified quad that I proposed was to have all the same actors, except to factor in America's unreliability and untrustworthiness vis-a-vis its strategic partners in Asia, and say, okay,
okay.
get America out and get the Southeast Asian countries in, some of the wealthier, better off countries like Singapore, Vietnam in particular, which has a great fighting spirit in history, in. And because the one country that China has never been able to tame is Vietnam,
That's right.
the only country in the world. And it's the only country that's beaten every great power anytime, and other than Afghanistan, who have dared to come into their backyard and try to impose their will. They've been really badly treated by the Vietnamese and the Afghans. So, they have been kicked out and, done away with. The egos were, in the mud, and they're squelched by the Vietnamese. And you look at the Vietnamese, and I went there to Vietnam two years back, almost as a pilgrimage, because I think they're the greatest nation in the world, honestly. And that's how I began
Wow. They
my
they
new
would love to hear. I've had the privilege of going there myself. Wonderful place. Beautiful. Yeah.
wonderful place. And you think these are the great fighters, and they're so nice, delicate people, nice and nice, very polite. And wow, even see how nicely they have done that, because
Yes.
the will is the unwillingness to be bossed over by anybody, no matter what. We'll do anything, to not tolerate any nonsense
Hmm.
from any outsider at any time for any reason. That's the wonderful thing, the fighting spirit, the nationalist will, as I say. Anyway, the point is get these people in, and
Yeah.
then, and America in the modified quad, you cannot prevent, we can't tell America, okay, you keep, or you don't get out of Hawaii or something. It'll always get out. They have a great navy. You guys have a great navy, and they'll float around here and there, but they cannot be relied on to do anything worthwhile. They'll have the FONOPS, the freedom of navigation patrols, and this, that, and the other. But if there's actual shooting, they'll be the first to decamp, get out of harm's way. So, and that's the record. It's nothing to,
Yeah.
because their interests are not engaged. If the interests are engaged, they'll get on and do whatever has to be done. If the Chinese come in to cross the second island chain, as they threaten to do, and come past Guam, then Americans will, get their carrier task forces on, and they will sink the Chinese Navy. No question of that. It's just that the Americans, it's not that they don't have the wherewithal. Americans don't lack for wherewithal, for God's sake. They have all the technologies and all these military hardware you want, and you can imagine. What they lack really is to sustain war fighting over time. It's not a one off thing. If it's a 1 week war, they'll be great. They'll come in and bomb you to death, right? Now try doing that for 20 years,
Yeah.
and that's when you run back home to your mama saying, oh, can't handle it, too many casualties and too many cripples coming back and body bags. But that's war,
Yeah.
unfortunately. It can't all be drone warfare where people are sitting in Nellis, Nevada Air Force Base, and then, handling their things for, global hawks to go down and fire a Predator missile on the Taliban encampment. It doesn't work that way.
That's
Sometimes
a
it doesn't
Hollywood
work.
movie.
No, no, no. It's not just Hollywood. It is. It was. That's how they managed it. But because they couldn't control the ground, they couldn't control Afghanistan. It's one thing to just have a missile come in and take out Talibanis. But to control the ground, you have to have boots on the ground. Once you have boots on the ground, your problems begin, because now you're taking out a person one on one. And if you do not have the kind of fighting will that an Afghan has or a Vietnamese has, then you are in very, very big trouble.
Hmm.
And this is the whole point. The Americans have never understood. They always belittle the enemies,
Yes.
gooks. They call the Vietnamese gooks. And these small little people,
True.
the Americans, when they first took over the Spanish colonies in the Philippines and so on, called them little brown brothers. They're very condescending, and the attitude was all wrong. And they got their ass kicked, and they
Yes.
don't learn. Hopefully, they'll learn. I don't think so. As I said, just give them time and they'll forget it and
That's
begin the
true.
cycle all over again. So,
The
yes, modified quad is what I think is going to work, because all the countries are organic to the region, and
Mhm.
therefore the security stakes they have are theirs to, uphold and to protect and safeguard. While America in the mix is an extraterritorial power whose interests are not aligned with the interests of the states in the region. So that's why I've said we can be friendly. The US can come in and they can give conditional help or whatever as an extraterritorial balancer.
Yes.
But that's all America is good for. It cannot fight. And we recognize that. It has no stakes. Why should it fight? I mean, what interest does India have in North Atlantic? They can
Mm-hmm.
go to the dance. I mean, I don't give a damn, right? So, hey, that's for America and Canada or UK to fight. If something happens there, fine, you take care of business. Similarly, if something happens off Sri Lanka, that's my business.
That's right.
Indian Ocean. So, that's perfectly fine. So, again, as I said, this is how you take care of business, knowing what the interests are and how much you can, shall we say, extend those interests beyond which the interests don't engage the political will, meaning beyond a point, geographic distance, the political will isn't there to fight because it's too far away. I
That's
mean, if
right.
someone is saying your interests are really Guam for the Indian Navy to go out there, well, no, we have a hard time, off the coast of Bombay. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, to, to go out all the way to Guam, God knows where. I mean, so similarly, therefore, Japanese have their great navy. They can
Mm-hmm.
look after their islands. India has our Indian Navy and Air Force. We can look after our, certain,
Lakshadweep,
uh,
Andaman.
not
Yeah.
just Australia and beyond,
Yep.
much beyond, to southern, maybe Diego Garcia, the Chagos
Yes.
Archipelago, Mauritius. The entire thing should come within reasonably our security perimeter. It is, if they're not security perimeter. And we look after those kinds of interests because they are our interests that need to be
Yes.
protected.
Well, it's the Indian Ocean after all, anyway.
Yeah, it
um,
is. And that's why, yeah. And that's why the Chinese have said it's not India's ocean. It may be the Indian
ooh.
Ocean. They've
Yeah,
formally said that.
they
And
wish
so
it was
that's,
called the Chinese Ocean, I'm sure.
but they have the South China Sea,
Yes, that's right.
right? So they have a China name somewhere, a small piddling sea. The entire ocean, that's the Indian Ocean. So they've said so that this may be the Indian Ocean, but it's not India's ocean. And I've said that that's what we have to ensure that it is India's ocean.
Yes.
Any Chinese ship coming west of Malacca Straits is coming at our sufferance,
Mm,
and we should make sure, let them know that you are here because we are allowing you to be here. And we can do that.
we should. Moving on to Russia. Now, Russia seems to be turning into, some say, a junior partner of China, and they are eyeing their opportunities in Afghanistan. How do you think all of this will affect Indo-Ruski relations?
No, I think that would be to underestimate Vladimir Putin, who has a great strategic
Hmm.
mindset. I think, along with Xi Jinping and his cohort in Beijing, he has the longest view. You have to have the long view. And he's very aware of Russian limitations in
Hmm.
terms of financial, austerity, in terms of lack of resources, simply speaking. And but otherwise, they're a great power. I mean, extraordinary military, extraordinary technical capacities, technological capacities, in advance of America in many respects. So, and when he says uh, he's showing interest in Afghanistan, it is to merely let the world know
Hmm.
that they too have an interest and they cannot be overlooked. That's really a signal to America.
Yes.
And no, they're nobody's, you know, what did you
Show
call it?
pony lapdog.
Yeah, then it is not China's, for God's sake. China is dependent entirely on Russia to give them the highest military technology, which they end up then, you know, screwdrivering, or what they call reverse engineering. So they've done that all their lives. But the Chinese are very good at it. They
Hmm.
reverse engineer everything in sight. You give them a telephone, the next day they reproduce it, component to component, and then sell it cheaper to the world. Which great, really. I wish India had that kind of
Yes.
capacity. We don't. We don't. We just are laggards in everything, and we are simply not serious. And we don't have a nationalistic perspective on economics or anything else for that matter. So that's where we are, and that's the way we are. Russia. Yeah, the point about Russia, I think so. No, Russia is nobody's, you know, hangdog, really. Chinese are not going to have, they're very, very mindful of Russian power.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese are. And the Russians are very equally mindful of the Chinese danger. So I don't see, and I always said that there's such tension,
Yeah.
inherent tensions endemic to the relationship between China and Russia right now. That's going to blow up sometime in the next 50 years.
Wow.
And so I foresee that. And I hope it comes sooner for our sake, for India's sake. I'm all for China and Russia going at each other and then China being reduced to nothing. Because Russia can do it.
To
And
be
I'm all
honest,
for
we can't do it. The only country, and
Russia.
America won't do it. So it's really, that's
Yeah,
right. Indeed.
only Russia can do it. And we, you know, goad Russia into doing it. I mean,
Such a
that's
geopolitical musical chairs.
not musical chair. This geopolitics, hard geopolitics.
Yes,
You just goad your friend into beating up on your enemy. You know, so that's good. But we are beating up on the wrong enemy, Pakistan. So
that's true. Um, you've spoken many times about indigenizing India's combat equipment, military equipment, arms, and so on. Where does India stand today in its quest to indigenize?
unfortunately, not we haven't gone very far. Um, there are too many vested interests that have flourished, made a lot of money importing things and just buying things abroad. So that habit of mind is not going to change easily. It's a habit of mind. It's not lack of indigenous capability. Um, so how do you deal with the habit of mind? And that's really our bane. And the Chinese boon is precisely the other thing. They say we have to indigenize. Whatever we do, fine. We'll reverse engineer, we'll do whatever the heck we have to do. We'll reproduce a copy, which won't be very good, but we'll use it. But the next 4 or 5 models, by the time you reach the sixth model, it's going to be world class. That's what Chinese have done. And they're extraordinarily good at applying their minds.
Hmm.
Skill sets are tremendous. I've been a visiting scholar, whatever they call the thing, the Shanghai Institute of International Studies. And, all I did, I was there they wanted me for a long time there, much longer time than I was. I was there for about 6 weeks or something, or 9 weeks, something like that. And they wanted me there for much longer. But I said, no, I can't be here for too long. And I asked to speak to them exactly this. You're completely adversaries. And I said, you should really begin to worry if we
Hmm.
follow the precedent, because you established a precedent of nuclear arming Pakistan, for instance. I
Hmm.
said, now that you established a precedent, it's for us then to follow up by reciprocating in like measure. And I've been saying that since my time in the National Security Advisory Board, and the government has finally sort of picked up on it. Of sending, I said, give them nuclear weapons to all of China's neighbors, nuclear missiles to all of China's neighbors. Let's see how China sweats bricks. They have discomfited us. They have discomfited us
Mm-hmm.
strategically by nuclear missile arming Pakistan.
Yep.
Just reciprocate. Let's see how tit for tat. Simple. And I've said this. Finally, the government has woken up and said, yeah, we will not. They don't say nuclear warheads, but I'd rather it be straightforward nuclear warheads. Give it to them. Give it to Vietnam. I mean, they are
Yes.
the ones who are going to take on. Let's see how the Chinese then behave.
Yes.
Um, uh, so my point really is that what is my point? I'm forgetting. What is the chain of?
We need a very
Oh, the
intentful
indigenous thing.
defense
The indigenous,
minister. That's what we need.
no, it doesn't help with defense minister. The defense minister is all mainline idiots. They're by and large, Mufussil or provincial politicians who don't know a damn about anything. And even prime ministers know very little. And our bureaucrats are completely compromised. Um, as I've said in my latest book, Staggering Forward, Narendra
Hmm.
Modi and India's Global Ambition, that's a 2018 book. Um, 92% of our foreign service members have their children where? In America.
That's right.
So what kind
I-
of decisions do you reckon they're making? That's what I say. And I've never been refuted in anything I say. I say it so openly. It upsets everybody, no end. But
You have
yeah,
said both sides.
yeah, I'm speaking the truth because once you speak the truth and you keep at
Yeah,
it and you make a case, not an opinion. Everybody has an opinion.
that's right.
Then you
You're right.
hit up with views, with substantive research, and that's what I always do. So people don't want to take pangas with me. But equally, then they say, well, Mr. Karnad's recommendations are invariably impracticable. That's what I was, Well, impracticable how? Why? Why would giving nuclear war-headed missiles to to
Vietnam.
Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, why is it impracticable?
Mm,
Did the Chinese think that it was impracticable when they gave nuclear missiles to Pakistan? And did they think about that? Or did they say let's screw India?
hmm.
I mean, what do you think there? And that's how I talk to Indian secretaries to the government. I said, what do you think the Chinese do? Right? They all sit quietly and twiddle their thumbs because they're compromised.
Yes,
Because their attitude is, oh, we have to please the Americans in Washington because they are into non-proliferation. Well, screw non-proliferation. I was saying torpedo the non-proliferation treaty. I said, just blow it up. Why blame Pakistan for AQ Khan? We should just give it out to
yes.
anybody who wants it and be a great revenue earner for India. Tremendous. What do you want? You want a bomb? Hey, come here. We'll give it to you. Let's see what. I mean, the point is you have to be disruptionist. That's the
Yes.
whole point about being a great power is that you are a disruptor.
Yeah.
You're not a joiner of clubs. Our people want to join the clubs,
Club.
big power club, nuclear club. No, you know, you destroy the international law legal system. No, if we are not there writing the laws, we won't obey them. Very simple.
Hmm.
That's the attitude. That's what the great powers do.
That's
What
one
are they?
thing that we have not been successful at
No, not at all. No, not
disruption and
don't have the we can do
innovating the
it.
way
We can do it, but nothing stops us. But we have not done it because,
we
as I
haven't done.
said, we don't have the gumption to do
Yes,
it.
interesting. Now, you once quoted an Israeli aircraft designer said, if we had something like the Tejas, we would never look at anything again. How good is the Tejas, and should we seriously be thinking about producing much more of it and even selling it to other nations?
No, absolutely. I just met the air chief the other day, just last week, and we talked about this. And Air Chief Marshal Badoria seems to be he's a test pilot, Tejas test pilot, experimental test pilot. And I was asking him, look, I'm not a flyer, but I've sat in the first prototype cockpit of the Tejas way back in '87.
Wow.
And I've handled the controls. It's like a video game. You're on a
Simulation.
and that was made possible only because and that time I was in Washington, and I wrote a piece saying that Tejas, by the time it becomes an aircraft hitting the tarmac, will be obsolete technologically, which
Oh,
is the case, which incidentally is the case. But I said that's because all manned aircraft are becoming obsolete, right? Because now is the time of drones and unmanned combat
mhm.
vehicles. In that case, you bring in a manned platform and the man becomes a liability. The pilot is a liability because machines can turn instantaneously at 9G, 10G, 10 gravity pull, at 10 times the weight of gravity. Human beings can't take it. The body cannot take more than 6G, 6 times the weight of gravity. And so when you do a very tight turn in an aircraft, and I went to a military school, so my early schooling, and all my batchmates are all air marshals and they're pilots, and they always tease me, about,
So exciting, I think.
yeah, it is very exciting, and they said, oh, yeah, California, tum gaye ho, theek hai, but you'll never know the joy and the thrill of having a joystick
Yes.
between your legs. They're having sexual innuendo,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
between boys, boy talk. And I said, but that's the whole point. There's an excitement to flying a plane.
Yes.
And I've been in IAF, the simulators, aircraft simulators. So I've flown Jaguars that way. I've flown because you get into a simulator in actual cockpit, and the thing exactly how it works, when you work the controls. So actual flying would be thrilling. So that's what I was talking to Bhadoria about. I said, how good is the Tejas, really? And he said, it's really I mean, and he's a very soft-spoken man, but very realistic.
Mhm.
First time I found an air chief who was really who he didn't ballyhoo the weaknesses of. I mean, he didn't try to cover up for IAF's
Yep.
weaknesses. Nothing was straightforward. Perhaps because he knew me, knew my reputation anyway. So when he wanted to meet me, so the point was that we talked, and he said, "No, it's a very, very good aircraft, as good as the Mirage 2000 we have."
Wow.
Which is a very good aircraft. Mirage 2000 is amongst, good five generation aircraft. And he said, Bharat, I'm sure that the AMCA, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, that's a follow on successor to the Tejas, will be just as good and better. So he's pushing it. So that's first time an air chief is pushing all these things that I know of. There might have been others. I don't think so. I know most of the
Hmm.
air chiefs last 30 odd years. This is the first air chief who's really excited about indigenizing and so on and so forth. And he has been the experimental test pilot, and he knows the inside out of flying the Tejas, and he thinks it's a great aircraft. And the Israelis and the French test pilots who have flown it have gone gaga over it. And
Wow.
I can see why, because the handling and in the prototype, when I wrote that from Washington, it was published in the Illustrated Weekly of India, then edited by Kushwant Singh, way,
Hmm.
way back, 86, 87. So well before your time. And so when it was published, the head of the Defense Research Organization got very upset. And I got back to India after some years spent in Washington. And then he said, you are so, negative about everything. I wanted to go see Tejas, what we have done. I thought, but you just started it 2 years ago. He said, yeah, and you see what we have done. So I said,
Hmm.
okay. So I took myself to the Tejas laboratories, ADA, in Bangalore. And I sat in the cockpit. So they closed the cockpit off, and it's beautiful stuff. And the
Wow.
software, the best thing was it's a fly-by-wire system.
Hmm.
So there's no hydraulics. It's just fly-by-wire. Just, it's a beautiful thing. Instantaneous turn. You can do almost anything you want with it. And, the fluid dynamics, the models that they had created were so thrilling. I went to the University of California as undergrad in chemical and nuclear engineering, nuclear and chemical engineering. And so I have some engineering background.
Yeah.
I got out of it because I realized I was no good at it, honestly, and got to security studies. But I have some background, so it's not as if science and engineering is unknown to me. So I can
Hmm.
understand the physics, and so when people tell me what it's like flying, you are trimming the flight. I mean, I
Yes.
understand what they're saying because I know exactly what's being said. In physics terms, I can understand what's said. So Tejas is a great plane. And I've said from here on, this should be the only aircraft. If you're going to stick with manned aircraft,
Hmm.
fine. Even though its day is gone, days are gone. The manned aircraft is becoming fast obsolescing. So therefore, you have to switch to unmanned. And
Yes.
but to the extent that you're going to still rely on manned aircraft, then stick only with the Tejas and its derivatives, whether
Yes.
larger aircraft like AMCA or still larger if you want. That's fine. Very heavyweight Tejas, LCA, fine. But LCA is a plan form which you upscale and add on things and do things. So fine, and it's a perfect export model for
Mm.
developing countries. That's perfect because if you have a first-rate aircraft, you can integrate any weapon system onto it, and it flies like an angel. People who say
Wow.
it's very flight tolerant. It's a mistake tolerant, meaning if the pilots who are not very good, it will correct the mistake of the pilot. That's a flight dynamics on a fly-by-wire. It'll correct it. So you can never go wrong flying it, unless of course you go right in front of an enemy gun and are blown up. That's your problem. But short of that, it's a beautiful aircraft and a great platform for Indian technology and a demonstration of India's technology, entirely designed by India. Beautiful
Wonderful.
aircraft.
Homegrown.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm
And,
curious.
but that's not surprising. The first Indian aircraft that went up was the Marut HF-24 in
Yes.
1961. So, for 30 years, this Air Force, and it was restarted in 1986, the LCA, Light Combat Aircraft. And after losing one whole generation of aircraft designers, you can't do this. And we foul up every which way in this fashion. We should have been armed self-sufficient 40
Yes.
years, 40 years ago. But again, because there are commissions and money to be made, corruption, the military unfortunately is involved.
Mm.
That's the way we are as a people.
That's our karmic story, I suppose. But
No, yes, it's
it's never
acceptable.
too late.
No, so there's no need to lose hope. I've said you should never lose hope, and India will make it.
Yeah.
It's taking a little longer than it should have. Had we been more dedicated and and set on our purpose, but fine, we're getting there.
And I mean, we are, I think, the most armed country in the world, if not one of the most. Uh,
Yeah, one
and
of the more.
and I mean, I think you've alluded to this before. How do we expect to be a rising real superpower in the world if we are one of the biggest importer of arms in the world? This is really an area where we have to get our act together.
Yeah, absolutely. Because by its very definition, a great power is one that is sufficient
Yes,
in the
every
wherewithal that you protect yourself with, or to project power, whatever it is. Short of that, you're a dependency. So I am called as an arms dependency. Now, if you're an arms dependency, you can never be a great power or even a consequential power, even if you're not a great power. So this is the real trouble. But hopefully, I think the military will become a little bit more nationalist minded and self conscious about the choices they make and what the ramifications are of choosing a foreign item or hardware at the expense of an Indian, piece of goods that Indian designed. The main thing is the design. The
hmm
components are not important. That's what I
yeah.
keep saying. So we have designed guns. We have designed a lot of things. Our tank, the Arjun main battle tank, is a very good tank. But then, these are all Second World War, not the hardware for future cyber war and so
hmm
on. And so we are always, you know, like
Try to
most
catch
armies.
up.
No, like most armies, we're all ready to fight the last war. So, if you were to, field the Indian army for the Second World War, we'd beat any competition,
hmm
including the Nazi war machine. Of the greatest set of generals there. But then we could have beaten them, given our thing. But because we are preparing for the last war. So,
Very.
yeah, but that's true of, by the way, most armies, not just the Indian army. You're all very well prepared for the last war, which means you are going to be shot up in the next war, where technologically you are being leapfrogged by technology, but you're not following suit. Suit by keeping up with technology because you don't have the money. It's because of uh, inertia.
Vision, intent, all that good stuff.
None of that. None of that.
Uh, Fast forward 10 years. What will be the fate of Pakistan and where do you think China will be?
Well, look, the people here have prematurely announced, and there are many who are very pessimistic about Pakistan and so on. I think it's fine. They're going to survive and do well. I don't think there's any problem with Pakistan at all. And the more time passes from partition, the generations that are coming up are free of what I call partition pathologies.
hmm
So you just on internet go on to any of the TV discussions and tremendously free press and media. I mean, far freer than India, honestly. I mean, they just slam bang the government, the army. I mean, the things I hear, I'm astounded because I see nothing like it here. Most of the idiots on TV are, don't know what they're talking about most times. They just are mouthpieces for the government. They have no expertise to talk of in any field, not just military, any field. There's some convent educated girls they have picked up who are pretty looking in front of a camera, and they come in and they don't know what they're doing, and they grow. I'm not being sexist. I say that about young men who just look good on camera, who are
Mhm.
photogenic, and that's all that seems to be the requirement for Indian TV studio or TV channels. They don't have to have any expertise. All they need to do have is sort of string two English sentences together in English medium TV channels for them to be on air. What they say seems not to be of any great concern to anybody. But no one pays them attention, I think. They think, who cares, you know? Just as you report the basic stuff, yeah, someone has died, the prime minister has killed somebody or something. Yeah. Short of that, it doesn't matter, you know, what you say, opinionate. So, you know, so I'm not at all pessimistic about Pakistan. But they are what they are,
Yeah.
very limited, small country on India's flank. No threat, never was a threat to India, can never be a threat to India, no matter how hard it tries.
Hmm.
I've
Even
said,
with nukes and
nukes, what will they do with nukes? I
I
mean, the
know.
exchange ratio for nukes is, and we have nuclear gamed it here, and
Yes.
uh, you know, if there's a nuclear war, let's say the worst case, there'll be two Indian cities that will go up,
I
but
get you. Yeah.
All of Pakistan is gone.
Yeah, that's
Pakistan
correct. Yeah.
is extinct. Pakistan is gone.
This is just
So I
common
said,
sense, right? It's common sensical to,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It is. That's why I've told this to Pakistani military audiences. I say this. I mean, for God's sake, one thing you are not professional. You guys are very professional army.
very. They're
They're
not big.
extremely no. They are extremely professional army. And that's why I tell our Indian Army, God, never underestimate the Pakistan Army. They're very
Yes.
professional. It's just that they're very small. They don't have resources.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so, had they the resources that we have, they'd make a much better military use of it than Indian Army has done. Right?
True.
When I say
Yeah.
this to the Indian military, I say it with a purpose because you see how well they've handled themselves, not in wars, it's true. They've been beaten every time simply because of the weight of India's mass.
Mm-hmm.
Once they come into the field to fight and we then deploy our field army, that's the end of the game. Because,
Outnumbered. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, not just outnumbered, it's just too much for Pakistan. You know, they
Yes.
can't handle it. They can't fight, for instance, right now, they cannot fight a war for more than 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot, because they don't have the monies to stock up. The inventories are small. You know, they just live literally hand to mouth. But they make a big show of it. They don't
Very
back
big
down.
show. And we
You
fall
know,
for it. The world
no,
falls for it.
and they don't back down, which I like. I like that. I like that attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, come and get me. You know,
It's like win at any cost.
try and come and get me. You know, I mean, they
Yeah.
don't have illusions. I keep telling people here, they have no illusion that they're great or anything. We have illusions, as you said, about being there. That we are nothing. But you know, Pakistanis are even less. Now, this is a real problem for the Pakistanis. So I've said of Pakistan that they try to be, you know, what uh, the English novelist of the 19th century, Thackeray, Makepeace Thackeray, said about a bullfrog, a frog trying to blow itself up to ox size. That's the problem with Pakistan, right?
Interesting.
And I've said that's what Pakistan is, and I've said it to Pakistanis, and they shake their head. They say, "Yeah, correct, correct." So Pakistan is not the problem.
Yeah.
Has never been, and they are literally a cultural appendage of India. Honestly, you go into Pakistan, they're a cultural appendage, except they're better. They're better at the cultural aspect too, because as I've said to you about the music,
Yeah.
about the poetry, about this, that, and the other, they're very good at it. They're because it's a smaller country and
Mm-hmm. Sure.
you know their talent is concentrated. And we are such a subcontinental country, you know. So what's happening in Guwahati, no one knows what's happening in Mumbai. They're not aware. There's such talent all over the place, you know, in
Yes.
cultural sense. You know, you go to the Shillong, there's something called the Shillong Choir. I don't know whether you heard that. You should.
No. And
They're
Carnatic music, south of India, there's incredible music, arts, dance, all that good
all the
stuff.
Puranas, all the Karnad, yeah, but the Shillong choir,
Choir.
church choir, extraordinary how beautifully they sing, and they are Anglican
Wow.
church. They converted the Naga tribals and so on of the northeast, and you listen to them. It's really uplifting. It's like going and sitting at the in the pews of the King's
The
College,
Vatican.
the King's College in Cambridge, when there's the choristers and then you're
Hmm.
getting the the Georgian chants and so on. It's a very uplifting because my daughter went to Cambridge and yeah, bright girl, I think. so
And
she, so she, when we went for a graduation in Cambridge, it's beautiful. I just wanted to listen to the Georgian chants, which I've done on early occasions when I had gone to Oxford and Cambridge for seminars and this stuff.
mhm,
But yeah, so it's that kind of very elevating thing. You just
yes,
to listen to it. It's that kind of effect that is there from the choristers from the Shillong choir, and similarly, when you listen to the Pakistanis when they go into the Sufi music, it's extraordinary. They're just into it so deeply that you cannot help yourself immersing into their
mhm,
experience. So it's a very real time thing. When you go into it over the TV, I just turn it on and I close my eyes and listen. So that kind of thing is there in Pakistan, and more, if you look at the TV debates, you talk to the intelligentsia, people in the intelligentsia there, they completely concede
yeah,
that we're entirely India rooted because the same culture.
yeah,
So how different can you be? How different can you be? So and now that pretense is gone that we are trying to be different. There might be
yeah.
some people there in the ruling circles still having some, but by and large, people are quite happy to reconcile themselves to saying, look, we are a branch of the Indian tree, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we are. And it's a very nice thing for people to reconcile to that fact. Not just a big thing for India, it's just a fact of life. So there's nothing for us to gloat over. It's just a fact of life that the Pakistan, they're so good at it, which puts you in shame because you're trying to westernize and this, that, while these guys are into so much more, while also modernizing. You look at the
Yeah.
Coke studio, you should go into it, Pakistan Coke studio. They westernize the music, but entirely on Indian ragas, and they do
Hmm.
such a damn good job of it. They're just overwhelming. Anyway, so I'm going on and on.
Wonderful. And China, 10 years from now.
China 10 years from now.
Ooh,
Well, as you know, I don't have a fix on China. Honestly, it's not my field. I don't know the language. Unless you know the language, I really don't
true.
consider people experts in on China. And most Indian experts on China don't know the Mandarin language. They
Hmm.
can't read the Mandarin ideographs. If you can't learn, that's the end of the story. I don't take it
Yeah.
seriously. So therefore, I have to rely on Western sinologists and experts, European, who know the language. The first thing I ask people is, do you know the language that you're writing about China? Can you read official documents?
Wow.
Can you read, historical documents from this, King dynasty? If I put it before you, can you tell me, translate it for me? If they shake their head and say no, then I walk off. Then you don't know any more than I do, and I would know more because I study China in this sense, in a distant sense, not in the immediate official documentary sense where
Hmm.
I can. So I don't have a fix on China, but I do know that they're they are so single-minded and singular in pursuing their goals that I have said in my books that if India and Indian government, people, and our establishment has no strategic sense, which I say they don't. I have charged the Indian, they have no strategic sense at all. There's no strategic, their strategic perspective is missing entirely from policy. So I've said that being the case, I said, okay, then you have to concede, okay, you're no good at strategy or strategizing. That's fine. Then I said, simply emulate the Chinese.
Yeah.
Do what they monkey see, monkey do. Do it.
Just the
But
good
that,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But by and large, Chinese have got it right. There's no bad stuff as far as China is a great power and how they're going about
Oh, that
realizing.
way, yeah.
Yeah, that's all. And I'm not talking about other things. Not Tiananmen Square or anything like that. You know, but I'm talking about, and whether the Chinese enjoy freedom or not, who cares? I don't give a damn, right? I don't give a damn whether China is free or not, or the Chinese are free or not. I don't give a
Yeah.
damn. I care that Indians are free. I'm free
Yes.
to say what I want. That's simple. I'm not concerned about other people. Americans seem to be concerned about democracy in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not. I'm not concerned about democracy in Pakistan. No, not my concern. I've been saying, do not worry. Deal with the military people.
Yeah.
They are the people who run Pakistan. Deal with them. Get a agreement with them, and you're fine because they run the show anyway. So what's the point in talking to some Ali Zardari and Shahnawaz, and all these people?
But, yeah.
You know,
Bilawal Bhutto.
Bilawal Bhutto, I mean, they are irrelevant to what your aim should be. And I've said, therefore, democracy, we shouldn't be the takedars that I've said.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be the guardians. We are not really, our democracy is so flawed that really you can't set yourself up as anything, leave alone as something great for Pakistan to follow, for God's sake. They're doing a fairly bad job of it anyway. So if they were to follow us, they'd go right into the ditch. So the point then to make is China follow them because they are so singular in pursuing their goals. They cannot be swayed. And
Hmm.
the strategic mindset is so good. And I've said the difference between the Chinese and the Indian strategic mindset is this, that we are in a linear world.
Hmm.
Policy wise, our policymakers think of the world in a linear way. A B follows A precedes B, very simple.
Yes.
One plus one is two, etc. Linear world, simple arithmetic. And the game that the Chinese and the Indians have when we talk about strategy and the adversary is a simple shatranj, right? Chess game, which we are supposed to have invented, which is really illustrative of our tendencies. Assuming the chess has come from shatranj, which is the board game,
Yes.
where the queen piece or the king piece goes and then you win. It's a two-party game, right? What is the Chinese game of strategy that the statecraft adheres to? It's Wai Chi. What is Wai
Hmm.
Chi? Think of the same chessboard, except the aim is to occupy as many squares as possible. And Chinese have occupied all the space until they leave you no space to maneuver. Now, transpose that chessboard, Wai Chi chessboard, to the outside world and see what happened. The Chinese are now pretty much taken over our entire neighborhood.
Hmm.
Pakistanis are in their pocket. So are the Sri
Sri
Lankans,
Lankans.
Habantota. Everybody, Bangladesh is being supplied fully by equipped with Chinese arms and military hardware. They're in Nepal. They're bringing in their railways right to the Nepalese border. So they're completely cornered us in our
Yeah.
own backyard.
In our own backyard. That's right.
What are we talking about when we talk about trying to compete with China? What? I mean, hey, talk sense, talk, be real, or rather, what's the word? Get real. Sorry, I got
Yeah.
that idiom. Uh, we don't have it. But unfortunately, just saying we don't have it won't do it for us, right? It's one thing to be honest, but then, okay, what are you going to do about it then,
Yeah.
right? And we seem to be doing nothing about it. We just waffle and then we just, Narendra Modi talks
Give
about
great
India being
speeches at the UN.
yeah, what's that? Modi talks about India being a Vishwa Guru. What kind of a strategic aim is that? I mean, I don't understand. That's what I said in my latest book. How do you translate that into strategy? What does Vishwa Guru mean? And what entitles you to be a Vishwa Guru? What
Well,
qualifications do you have, for God's sake? Because you can do yoga and stand on your head? I mean, what qualifications do you have? You're Vishwa Guru. No, I mean, it's not a joke. This is the real tragedy of
Mm,
Indian politics, Indian nation building.
yeah,
We seem not to be serious uh, about understanding the world around us and how to get along and to further our interests.
yeah.
We are still in the miasma of idealism, morality, Vishwaguru.
Vasudeva Kutumbakam, all that jazz while people are poking us at all ends. Um,
Yeah.
do you think that India is still soft selling her hard power?
no, no, we have no hard. We have hard power to sell if we mean to. To be fair to this government, now
Yes,
we are making some forward moves.
yes.
We are realizing that we really have to go out there rather than merely talk about being out there. And we are beginning to take China and the Chinese threat
Mhm.
seriously. It's the beginning of wisdom, strategic wisdom. But they're not doing the next thing, which is to say, diverting funds and wherewithal, fighting wherewithal from the China, from the
Mm,
Pakistan sector and front to the China front. Because I've said to you earlier, you can vacate the entire western border with Pakistan. Just put
mm.
a police chowki there, put a police post out there. That's enough. Havaldar will do it, wield the danda against some Pakistanis going
Interesting.
across. That's enough. Yeah, there are nothing the China Pakistan military will dare do
We're
because
wasting too much time, energy, money, and resources on Pakistan, essentially.
which really doesn't deserve it. Do you know what Pakistan's GDP is? This is a statistic I keep quoting.
It's one eighth the size of Mumbai's GDP or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it is now 1/13 the size of the Mumbai capital.
Stop.
The cap on the Mumbai Stock Exchange.
Wow.
And you take this, you talk seriously about Pakistan as a threat. Who's going to take you seriously?
Interesting. Yeah.
Into that's my argument. I've made for 30 years. Who's going to take you seriously as a power of any kind, even on a great power, if you're going to be spooked by a Pakistan? While Pakistan has every right to be spooked by you and to take you seriously and think you a danger to their life and a fatal, choices they have to make to keep, you not overwhelming them, simply
Hmm.
overwhelming them. So the Pakistanis are quite right in perceiving India as the main threat. We are simply by being there. You don't have to be, an elephant that goes must to fear
Yeah.
that it can go must at any time, right? It'll simply trample over you. What can you do? The best not to be in its vicinity, right? It might be a very good circus elephant and will always be tame and do nothing. But should it take it into its head, well, I've had enough. What do you think it'll do? It'll trample you,
Trample.
finish you off. End of the story. That's what
Interesting.
the Pakistanis are justly afraid of. And this is why I say that whatever Pakistanis do is good. That's good for them. What we shouldn't do is respond in kind,
Yeah.
because we have fish to fry. We have bigger things to worry about. Now we have a still bigger elephant gorilla on our door,
Yeah.
right? A Godzilla, if you're going to go the dragon motive, against an elephant. So you have a Godzilla. Now deal with it seriously. That means you have to completely switch off from Pakistan. Let them do whatever they have to do. Don't worry about them. Get on with dealing with China.
Wonderful. So just two last questions. This is a good one. Uh, I'm here in Hollywood,
Let
and
me just
we know
that.
the effect of pop culture. Uh, and I'm very much into cricket. I do a lot of cricket analysis and hosting and commentary. And you've spoken about this before. The role of, I mean, the real soft power of India is actually cricket. As far as both Pakistan and Afghanistan is concerned, especially the IPL. So, can you just speak to that? Like, what role that has had? Because I think when it comes to cricket, both nations can just put on the sports loving cap on and appreciate the game. And in the World Cups anyway, we do play against each other. So the I guess the power of the IPL in a way, or the power of cricket in a broader sense.
Yeah. I mean, the only true religion in South Asia is cricket.
That's
Not
right.
Islam or Hinduism, really. I mean, that goes by the way. Well, okay, have competing things. Tomorrow there's some religious ceremony going on, and there's a gripping test match at Lord's. Where do you think they're going to turn on to that wretched religious ceremony, or they're going to be looking at what's happening in Lord's? It's a very simple thing, same in Pakistan. And if you look again, I completely turned on to, I don't watch Indian TV at all. I don't. I watch
But you like
Pakistan.
IPL.
No, I don't. I mean, that's a kind of a contrivance, 20-over match or something like that. It's fun. I mean, I've been to some of these things. It's fun. Just the 3 hour stuff, and then you go home as if you've seen a matinee show. That's fine, but that's not cricket. It's cricket in a way, and it steals you into doing things, and that's how we have built up our talent base. It's a good thing, and this is what now I think that the Pakistanis, if you look at their discussions, which I do, the TV discussions on cricket and so on, they are really mad at the fact that their cricketers are being left behind because they
Mhm.
cannot participate in the IPL.
That's right.
And this is why I've said that we should use IPL as a diplomatic device. Tell the Pakistanis, okay, we'll get you into IPL, we'll let your chaps come in if you do this, this, and the other. And they'll do it.
Exactly.
And they'll do it.
I'm with you completely. Yeah.
Yeah. And we let everybody know, hey, we offered your government to do this, but your government is not. So they'll then jump on their government and bring pressure on them to do it. And actually, it's a great thing if we could do that. But again, we don't have the imagination. I've always said we lack the strategic imagination to use all our attributes and our assets. Now, cricket is an asset.
Yes.
We are the largest, richest, board
Sporting
of cricket.
board in the world, the BCCI. Yeah.
We are the richest. I mean, we can do anything. Tomorrow we can close down Australian cricket.
Yes.
Tomorrow we can do it. We can close down the English cricket. That's why England are suddenly realizing after
Oh, they're getting very scared. That's why they're coming up with their own
yeah, but that
cheap
doesn't
attempt to compete with the
yeah.
IPL.
But the test matches, the first two at Trent Bridge and Lords, they're near full houses when it was raining and the COVID.
Yes.
They can't believe it. And that's why they've given us 5 test matches, a full series, 5 test matches. Why? Because they realize it's not the Ashes anymore. Right? Your Ashes is not a big thing. Okay, you'll still go to Australia this winter and, on Boxing Day, you're going to
And
have
lose again.
at the GABA or whatever it is. But the point I think to make is that they realize, that matches with India is what gets
Yes.
them the money, gets them the eyeballs, worldwide audiences, and gets you the money. Because boards need Indian money. Because Indian advertisers are really funding everybody.
Absolutely.
including-
80% of the revenue in the global
Yeah.
game of cricket comes from one country. This is enormous dominance and power this is one area that we have done so well, and we need to
Yeah.
use it
But
carefully
which,
to our advantage.
yeah, but which leverage we don't use.
We don't.
This is the thing. Why don't we use it against Pakistan? I mean, just in a good way, saying, hey, okay, we shouldn't impugn their security or anything, no. But simple things like, whatever, you can get simple things done and
Sticks and
make
carrots.
it
Yeah.
public. Make it public, as I've said, just so the Pakistani people then turn on their government to be more, giving and saying, hey, get on with it and give the Indians what the heck they want, as long as our chaps can go play IPL.
Yeah.
Because IPL is a great experience of extraordinary, pressure.
Hmm.
You're in a cauldron, as it were, with
Yeah.
300 million people shouting down at you, and for you to still see the ball and maintains the singularity of focus, that you're just shutting out the noise and all that, and and then you have to hit a 6 or some shit like that. I mean, it's extraordinary, the pressure that's
Yeah.
there on the batsman in a 20 over kind of match, and there's no give. There's nowhere to hide if you fail. I mean, it is it really steals you. And that's what
Yeah.
the Indians coming through IPL, and everybody wants to get in. You're paid so well. That's
Yes.
the other thing. The Pakistani cricketers, I again on TV, some people are saying, you know, mukabla kahan hai, and where's the competition? We are not even in the picture. Are there third rate players, the various grade, third grade, third tier grade cricketers, make 3-4 crore rupees a year. Virat Kohli makes 100 crores. You
Yeah.
know, someone
The
else
first
makes
class
20
cricketers.
crores.
Yeah, that's true. And
I mean, right. And foreign cricketers make so much money that they don't want to, they'll say, oh, screw English cricket if you can
yes,
get shy at
IPL.
the IPL. And that's what's happening. Now, England are saying, we should just ban them from all test cricket if they choose IPL. That's the argument now. Australians are debating, what the fuck do we do? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, they have the big bash, but nobody can emulate the IPL because it's masala. It's masala.
Absolutely. Not just masala, it's fun, entertainment. I mean,
Tamasha, yeah.
tamasha, it's a
I love
tamasha.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. For us spectators, there's nothing better. But think of the poor guy out there. The bowler is bowling the last over. He cannot concede 7 runs because
Yes,
the whole damn thing in the world is going to sit on him if he does. And sure enough, he does it. He becomes a hero.
yes,
He loses. He lets the batsman hit a 6 or a 4, God
yes.
forbid, something, and lose the match. That's the end of the world for him. He can make tons of money, but he's in the doghouse, right? I mean, you're finished until you recoup recover your lost ground and your reputation in the next match where you do something else. You become a hero. The point to is a beautiful system of
Yes,
it's like making steel, iron being made into steel. You have all the raw talent, but unless it is finessed in the Indian cauldron, it doesn't come out a finished product to deal with
exactly.
pressure, to deal with all the other vagaries of the game. So yes, IPL is a tremendous draw for all cricketers of the world,
Mm,
and every cricketer worth his salt would prefer the IPL to anything else,
yeah,
to playing for their country, to becoming in West Indies prime ministers of their country. I don't know.
that's true.
Who cares? We can make so much money, $3 million for 6 weeks.
Yeah. And has become a
Three
global
million,
superstar.
3 million pounds. Sorry, so that's about nearly $6 million
Yeah.
for 3 weeks or 1 month or 1.5 months, whatever it is. I mean, next to nothing, for God's sake. You're set up for life if you have one season of IPL. I mean, think of it. Why would you, if I'm a professional cricketer, what would my aim be then? Simply to get into IPL
That's
and get
right.
into any damn team and then try and do your bit to excel at least in 1 or 2 matches so
Yeah,
they give you another contract next year. Very simple.
that's
That then
true.
becomes your sole goal and objective for every cricketer in the world to be.
I think I know I'm so proud of IPL and what India's done by the way of IPL. And I mean, if you remember the 2011 World Cup, we won the World Cup by that six in the last ball. People will never forget that shot by MS Dhoni. It went out of the ballpark, so to speak. And then the whole country celebrated, which is beautiful. The
Yeah,
T20 World Cup is coming. I
yeah, yeah.
think India has a good shot. IPL is coming up in Dubai. I'll be there hopefully. So all
Oh, great.
exciting
Wonderful.
exciting times.
Great,
Um,
great.
and just to finish off, my last question is: do you think India will be a superpower in my lifetime?
I'll tell you one thing, it won't be in my lifetime. In your lifetime, it won't, and I won't ask you your age, but that depends. Um, Look, becoming a
There's hope.
superpower, becoming a superpower is what? Just passing some metrics, right? I mean, it's like you're crossing some milestones, that's all. It's just that we have set the wrong milestones and then
Hmm.
we go about it in a laggardly fashion. That's not the way to do it. The Chinese are, for instance, they capitalize and utilize everything. The century of humiliation. We, India, have never used that because we never felt humiliated, even though we were a slave country for 500 years, 800 years, depending on how long, far back you want to go. Anybody
Correct.
who wants to come in and conquer Delhi could come in and conquer Delhi. It was that easy, right? There was no sense of, hey, fighting for your, or these are foreigners. Or, we had no sense. Anybody could come and rule us. Therefore, in my first big book, Nuclear Weapons in Indian Security, it's an 850-page book. All my books are, I must warn you, lengthy.
Mm.
So I said, there I quote a Polish sociologist, and I will end on this note. He called India, very aptly, I thought, and I've used it ever since. He called India a land of subjugations, which is a very beautiful, very apt description by a Polish sociologist who then settled down in Britain. And his name is Stanislaw Andrzejewski. And it's a wonderful, wonderful take on India by a foreigner, which is the correct thing, which no Indian could think of. Because
Mm.
you have to be very far away to see what country keeps getting subjugated every time. Why? And why? One, Alexander's mission to come into Punjab and conquer Punjab is one thing. But repeatedly, again and again, over time, there's something wrong, right? And the subjugators then become part of the population who get subjugated.
Hmm.
I mean, and of course, the beauty of this, I see the beauty of it. The
Yes.
upside is that in a sense we are the ultimate mongrel race, right? With that mongrelized memory, cultural memory, we are everything. We
Yeah.
have we have connections to everything. Think of it. We are such a mongrelized race, which is a very good thing. Mongrels are the hardiest people in the world, right? Pure breeds are going to die at the slightest instance. The first little, what's
Mm.
that, virus that comes in, it kills you. But a mongrel race, you can bring on all the viruses in the world, nothing happens, and you survive.
We do
And
have
our
some
now,
very good inbuilt immunity, I must say.
yeah, it's because of over the ages, the Indian people are such a mix of
Yeah.
everything that we can excel at anything if we put our
True.
mind to it. So
And we do. Yeah.
we do, but not in India. By and large, many people have to go abroad. I mean, why would Sundar Pichai have to lead Google in America? Why didn't you set it up here in India? Of course, there are people who are setting up, Infosys and so on and so forth. But again, they are doing derivative work. But that's a separate story.
Wonderful. But the beauty is we are still standing and we're not going anywhere.
Okay, if you say so.
It was wonderful, Mr. Karnad, to have this amazing conversation. Wow,
Well,
almost 2 hours. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was,
I did,
it was
I did, yeah.
quite fascinating.
Nice, yeah. Thank
Such a
you.
pleasure.
And just send me the URL after it's up.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
We'll
And
put it on
thank you
my
so
blog.
much. And we'll see how your predictions
Oh,
turn out
sure.
over the next several weeks and months.
Okay,
and
good.
and and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. uh Please share, like, subscribe, let everyone know about this wonderful episode. I'm sure everyone will like it. Please let us know how, if you have any questions, interact with us. And we look forward to bringing you another amazing episode on the Preety Experience too. Namaste, dhanyawad, jai hind.
Bye bye.